talk this week about the WrestleMania builds. And the reason I want to talk about the WrestleMania build is because WWE has been posting a lot of content on their YouTube channel, the WWE Vault, essentially the new WWE network. And I was picking up on WrestleMania 3, which they recently posted. We all know Andre, Hogan, that was the major match there. But it made me kind of think, because obviously there's a few video packages that lead up to some of those builds. And, I don't want to compare it to the Attitude Era because that's a typical build like we're talking about now with Raw and SmackDown every single week. But going back then, it's just crazy to look at the builds in general for feuds, right? They're few and far between when it comes to how often we see the guys on TV. Venture to say, if you watch WrestleMania 2, Brandon, and then you watch WrestleMania 3, those in that calendar year might be the only two live WWF events you watch. Everything else could be very taped and very pre-recorded before you get between those two events. Nothing was live back then. Saturday Night's Main Event weren't live. Superstars obviously weren't live. Things were not just not live. They were taped like a month in advance. But some of the big parts of Andre versus Hogan were like 3 total things that happened. I mean, they rewound the clock like almost a year to showing them teaming up together on a Saturday Night's Main Event. Then they show the infamous, Andre ripping Hogan's shirt off in the crucifix and challenging him to a match at WrestleMania 3. But that's like it. And it makes me think of today's builds because we are a little ways away from WrestleMania. There is still Raw and SmackDown to fill every single week. It is the latest in the calendar year that it's ever been. And I understand Elimination Chamber and Royal Rumble were a little bit later, but not much later, right? January 30th, a Royal Rumble has happened before, but then this year it was February 1st. And I think they're actually crazy enough. WrestleMania in the year we had COVID, so a lot of that stuff gets kind of lost. So WrestleMania 2020, that Elimination Chamber that year was actually like March 8th. So March 1st wasn't too crazy late in the calendar. No. And right now it doesn't feel too weird because of the fact that we are still a ways away from WrestleMania, but we're still at the point now where these would be the go home shows. But a lot of people talking about the John Cena Cody Rhodes build. From the understanding we have now is John Cena is only advertised for this upcoming Monday Night Raw in London as the last appearance scheduled before WrestleMania. We haven't had any face-to-face except for, like in the sense of a promo. We've had them together in the ring and then separate. John Cena hasn't really answered back to Cody for anything. So I guess the question and the topic I want to kind of talk about today is, what do we need for this John Cena Cody Rhodes? And we'll talk about other matches to go along as well. But really, what do we need? Because I'm feeling this so far a little flat.
I mean, for me personally, I think the John Cena promo that he did, what was it, Brussels this past week?
They were in Scotland this past week.
Well, I mean,
Brussels the week before Scotland this past week.
So the initial promo in Brussels last week, I thought it left a little bit to be desired because it was more about him talking to the fans more so than like talking about Cody Rhodes, and I thought that was kind of interesting. I felt like the next exchange should be more focused on really why attack Cody Rhodes, like why are you teaming with The Rock? There's some unanswered questions that I like to know as a fan leading up to the main event. Like that to me is what I'm looking for. Like I get they've had some exchanges, but it's been like little barbs here and there. There hasn't been enough for me to justify like, okay, they've got this thing really locked in and ready to go. Like I still want to see the match, obviously. Like that's something we all can agree on. We want to see the match. But I think as a fan and from my perspective, I felt like they've left a little bit to be desired when it comes to building the story of John Cena and Cody Rhodes and why these guys are together and why John Cena is doing these things. I get that he wanted to explain it to the fans, like, it was like the way he was cutting that promo last week. It was more towards the fans. So I want to see more of that John Cena attacking Cody Rhodes and Cody Rhodes going after him on the microphone before we go, because, like you said, this is the last show before WrestleMania that John's going to be on. And I do want to do a quick sidebar. I'm wondering, because of of this European tour that they're doing, it's kind of interesting that I feel like in a way, and I have to say, is it possible that the European tour was made for John Cena, so John Cena could still film his movies overseas and then still show up on the WWE shows leading up to WrestleMania? So if that's the case, that's pretty darn cool, by the way. But that's my takeaway. I'd like to see more of them towards each other, so to speak. Where do you land on that?
So yeah, and that's kind of what like brings this up is like what gets you hyped. Like obviously talking about Hogan and Andre back in the day, you had like Andre just say, I challenge you to a match at WrestleMania. Moments later, Hogan says yes. And like that was it. And back in the day too, wrestling shows were kind of structured a lot different. Obviously they filmed a lot of shows, like they filmed a month worth of shows in a day. So this month they might be going to New York City for a TV taping and 20 other places, but those 20 other places are just house shows. So they might be doing like one TV taping a month and might be doing, like I said, a promo. Like that's it. And when it comes to this, it's a big time matchup, but I don't feel like I did. I was never anti like Brock Lesnar or Roman Reigns when they were kind of part-time-ish back in the day. And I'm not anti necessarily John Cena being that way, but I
know you aren't.
So I'm not against, because again, I only feel that some people need to be there as much as they need to be there. If you can build it without that, then that's great. John Cena isn't Brock Lesnar.
I will say though, not to cut you off though, you've been consistent on that. Like the whole Brock Lesnar thing, you and I were very different. You've stuck with the way you feel about it. So to your credit, you've kind of stayed in place with this John Cena thing. You're not going the other way.
I do feel with this, I'm not necessarily anti John Cena, how many times he should show up. But I feel like with the Brock Lesnars and the Roman Reigns when they didn't show up that much, they were either the champion or they were like a really heavy contender. And John Cena is the challenger in this. I'm just trying to figure out why I'm really hyped up. And I get it, him fighting for the championship. But again, he's going against Cody Rhodes himself. So as you just mentioned, it's not just about him going for the championship, but he's facing Cody Rhodes, and why I should care that he's going against Cody Rhodes. As for the Rock thing, and I know we asked this before, so I'll ask this again. Do you think, and I know Rock, he's 20 steps ahead. He loves saying that, right? But do you think really are we going to get an answer to him being aligned with The Rock? Do you think that was just a one-off? Because we've mentioned nothing about that.
I hope we get some sort of answers. That would be cool. I will say this. I wouldn't be surprised if we get some sort of answer in regards to that question at WrestleMania. And I'll say it'll be potentially in a scenario where The Rock screws Cody Rhodes and helps John Cena get his 17th championship, which would obviously put him ahead of the Nature Boy Ric Flair.
Now, here's the thing, though, right? And then this kind of talks about what we just talked about, where part-timers and needing more out of people so that we can kind of figure out what the best going forward is. If John Cena doesn't divulge his involvement with The Rock at all, and then The Rock comes out at WrestleMania and screws Cody Rhodes, would you feel like a little flat when it comes to that, because of the fact that we still, like, if we know why The Rock is with John Cena right now, that can kind of give us, because WrestleMania isn't supposed to just be Elimination Chamber. It's not just supposed to be, payback. It is supposed to be, I don't want to say the culmination, because we know obviously wrestling goes on. But, if it's just like he screws him, and like that's essentially just brings us back to Elimination Chamber. So it's a refinish of what we saw at Elimination Chamber, but this time just for the belt, right? It leaves us with more questions than answers, but we have those questions now. That's the problem. We have the questions now. So it's not like we're like, why is John Cena with The Rock? John Cena better answer for him being with The Rock or vice versa. We have those questions now. So if they just go to WrestleMania, screw Cody Rhodes, it's not like we have new questions. It's just we already have these questions, and now you're doing it on the biggest stage of all. Now John Cena is the champion. And again, John Cena could then show up on SmackDown or Raw after WrestleMania and do what he's doing now and just be the champion, but then just not acknowledge that he even got help from The Rock and just be like, wait, hold on a minute. Like, answer the Rock part. So I feel like that would just leave us with more questions, but leave us with the same questions we have now. I guess that's the best. Not more questions, the same questions.
I'll ask you this question. And I know we're obviously we're gonna divulge and break it down really, obviously down to a T as the weeks, because we're what about 3 weeks away? A little
more though. Yeah, we still got a little more. But
yeah, and here's the thing. I want to ask you this. At this time, as of this recording, do you think Cody Rhodes leaves WrestleMania as champion, or do you think John Cena gets his 17th? And I'm going to preface it this way. We obviously can change as the story gets built within the next few weeks. I just want to see where you're at right now.
I'm at Cody Rhodes winning, and here's why. Because the whole John Cena, where he said this week he's going to take the title and retire, and then essentially you're going to have a toy belt to fight over. That kind of, I don't want to say that gives it away, but John Cena said I'm going to ruin wrestling, right? And let's be real, John Cena the person, right, versus John Cena the character. John Cena the person would never, and I understand he would never be a heel. He's a heel, we get it. But John Cena the person, I really feel like frowns upon that. Like, if he's going to win the belt, even as a heel, right, he's going to do it in the wrestling way. Like, I understand he says he's going to ruin wrestling, but I don't really foresee him or them doing that because John Cena understands the importance, not just of winning the belt, but the legitimacy of the belt. And kind of, I mean, maybe he does that because that way that kind of justifies him being a heel and not really winning the belt, quote unquote, and then like not screwing over the history because, he did it a bad way as a bad guy. So he'll do it a good way as a good guy. But it just in general, like it's similar to when people announce retirement matches and those kind of things when they're not retiring. It gives away the finish a little bit to me if I just don't don't see him doing that or really wanting to do that. Like, it's just, this isn't the summer of Punk where Punk left with the belt and then it was John Cena versus CM Punk, champion versus champion for one champion overall. I feel like because this is his farewell year, I see him winning the belt for sure, but I don't see him doing it in some sort of weird, wonky kind of way.
No, I have to agree with you on that. I think if it's going to be done, it's going to be done, like, I don't want to say by the book, but I think as close to the book as it'll possibly be. Now,
I can see him, using a rock or something, like doing it but doing this whole thing where he's like going to retire with the belt and go away. Well, first off, again, even as a heel, he still has got to make some towns. This is his last year, right? And I believe him truthfully as the person that this is his last year. So I believe he's going to still keep making these towns. I don't think he's going to win the belt and then end the year early. I don't see that. Real or fake, shoot or kayfabe.
No, I think he's gonna make the towns. I don't know what his movie schedule is, but my speculation is, like I said earlier, I think the European tour and him filming in Europe was not a coincidence, if you get what I'm saying. So I think the United States fandom needs some John Cena before he retires. And to your point, when John Cena said he's going to retire, I believe him. I don't think it's going to be like every other wrestler, I feel like, over the years where, like, Ric Flair's retired how many times? You know what I mean?
And they've already scheduled him to be at a lot of shows post WrestleMania. So I don't know if that's also given it away that he's going to win the belt and not retire. But he's scheduled for a lot of shows after WrestleMania. And this kind of too is in the sense of like old school kind of booking. Regarding promos, because back in the day, Hulk Hogan could be at a lot of towns. But that doesn't mean he had something to say at every one of those towns, right? So like, imagine, kind of if we had this like old school style approach where like Raw and SmackDown every week are just wrestling shows. There's maybe like a whole Monday Night Raw that goes by without advancing any story. Right? Where just it's matches and maybe like it advances one story or there's like kind of one promo. But, for the most part, it doesn't advance much. It's just wrestling like it was back in the day, right? A whole Superstar taping might have, like, we hear from Ultimate Warrior at the end of the Superstars episode, but the Superstars episode is all wrestling. And then at the end of the episode, Ultimate Warrior is just reminding Hulk Hogan that at WrestleMania 6 we're fighting. Like, don't forget. Like, no, it doesn't really advance anything really.
Yeah.
But it'd be kind of weird to have that maybe nowadays. We're like, John Cena is scheduled to be on that SmackDown, but he's going to wrestle, and he doesn't have anything to say, regardless of if he's champion or not champion. Maybe that would be an interesting approach. But I guess my final question about this particular thing before we wrap it up on this part for this week, before we kick the can down the road to WrestleMania. This upcoming Monday, John Cena is scheduled to be on Monday Night Raw in London. Do we see John Cena on our television screens on a Raw or SmackDown after this week before WrestleMania?
I think not. I think it's going to be one of those things where, I mean, when I say he might not appear, I don't think he could do what the Logan Paul does and like post an Instagram video maybe or something, because that's what that's what Logan Paul has been doing. I could see that, but actually appearing in front of that audience on your television screen, I don't think so. I think after
it's just
this,
weird, you know, with WrestleMania coming so late in the year, and I understand that that's why these, you know, promotions have been pushed off a little bit, you know, because it's coming later. But it's going to just be weird. Thinking if after Monday Night Raw we essentially have enough for us to really care about John Cena versus Cody Rhodes as the main event of this year's WrestleMania.
And to finish off on that, that's the intrigue. That's what's going to get you to tune in. So I guess we'll have to find out.
We'll have to find out. And as for the other matches going along, CM Punk is kind of hinted at. There might be some kind of maybe stipulation going into the triple threat match at WrestleMania. There's been some rumors, I guess, and I don't even really mean like strong rumors from reputable sources, but just essentially that hint and just the idea that this is such a major match, and that it could potentially even main event night one of WrestleMania. Anything that you think about this match from what we know today and what you have a feeling about, that this match is going to be anything but just a heavy hitter triple threat match, or you think there's going to be anything more to add to this?
I would say, as of this recording at this time, I would say it's going to be a heavy hitting triple threat match. I mean, it's TBD. I mean, there's a few weeks left before we get to Mania, so I mean, we kind of like it's almost like the whole John Cena thing. It's like we just kind of have to wait and see. But for me at this point, I really lean towards triple threat, heavy hitting. You're going to see a lot of bombs thrown. Like you're going to see people just getting their asses kicked. I think it'll be a good quality match. And the best part about it is it's a good quality match without a title. So I think that's interesting too.
Very curious to see if maybe it main event's night one, and then somebody maybe who wins it gets to be added to the main event of night two. I mean, so far the only time we've seen anything like that from the main circuit is last year, obviously with the tag team match on night one, and then the main event on night two. We did see it with like the women's tag titles in 2021. That kind of gets forgotten about, where like I think there was like a number one contender gauntlet on night one, and then the actual tag titles on night two.
Let me ask you this: what are your thoughts on the favor? Like, what do you think the favor is? Any ideas?
I mean, as CM Punk said, he kind of hinted at his whole idea of main eventing WrestleMania, which is he's kind of indicated that he, in his recent promo, that the whole Roman versus Seth thing is a Roman versus Seth. It's hard to say Seth, right? Roman versus Rollins thing is a more of theirs, right? He doesn't really have much to do with it other than the fact that it cost him his WrestleMania main event. But he did indicate, based on one, that there's the favor. He did say that. And he did also say that, he hinted at the idea of that his WrestleMania main event spot isn't gone yet, essentially. He hinted at that it's not off the table.
Let me answer that a little bit. Do you think that CM Punk, and again, we're going to kick the can down the road, the next couple weeks. Mm-hmm. Hypothetically speaking, if say CM Punk wins this triple threat match, like, does that mean the favor is, like you said, do you think he gets input into Cena versus Cody Rhodes? I mean, and then does he hijack it? Like, does he hijack the title? And because he that's what he's been. He's been a disruptor for a long time. Maybe maybe what he does is he disrupts The Rock's plan. I'm just saying.
I mean, you give him some sort of money in the bank contract if he wins the triple threat or something.
I
Okay.
mean, who knows? I mean, my guess is as good as yours at this point. I'm just excited to see how it's all going to play out.
I guess, and then finally, for there's a lot of matches for WrestleMania built up and still on the build. I think we need a lot more for Drew McIntyre and Damian Priest for me to care about that just non-title match. But the match that was apparently the first one that was made, really, Jey Uso, right, winning the Royal Rumble, him versus Gunther. Are we done building that now, or are we just essentially talking kicking the can down the road? Or we just, because it's like the same every week, right? It's Jey Uso in a tag match, it's Jey Uso in a one-on-one match. He wins the match, he eats, and then Gunther interrupts at the end, attacks him. Like, do we need more for this? Are we done with this? What do we do with this going forward?
I think we're not done. I think we alluded to it on Raw this past week. Big Jim, Jim Uso there, Jimmy Uso, Jay's twin brother, obviously. He slapped Gunther in the face, and I think they're going to have a match next week. So I feel like there's going to be some sort of implications there where I think Gunther is really on the attack on Jimmy. And, Big Jim is kind of, very prone to, getting his rear end kicked in pretty good. And then I think Jay comes in for the save. And I think for once, I think Jay is going to come out on top.
I mean, there's a few matches still yet to be obviously sewn up for WrestleMania, but we still have a few weeks to go, as we talked about. So I will say, obviously, a lot of people are talking about Charlotte and Tiffany. Tiffany is getting the short end of the stick when it comes to the promotions, when it comes to that.
What did you make of that whole thing? Because it felt like, I don't know if it's true or not, because, I don't know. I'm not backstage, but there's a lot of rumor and innuendo that, Charlotte kind of went into business for herself and kind of caught Tiffany off guard. Do you think that's kind of any I guess any legitimacy behind that, or you think it's just you think Charlotte's already, I think they're just building Charlotte a different way.
I'm not sure, obviously, because I do believe that stuff is not live, right? It's taped. It's probably, who knows if either of those are even on location kind of thing. You know what I mean? They could have both been back in Stamford, Connecticut, taping that. So it's tough to know because it is a tape thing. So, would they tape it and then leave it in there? Would they make them retape it?
Yeah, but to me, Tiffany looked a little uncomfortable with some of the things Charlotte was saying. So I felt like maybe in a way it wasn't, Charlotte went off the script, so to speak.
Maybe, I mean, again, maybe that is only to give Tiffany more momentum in the sense of fans behind them.
Yeah.
Make her kind of like an underdog. Because I do feel like no one wants to see Charlotte actually win, right? I feel like that's just like, the old thing where it's like, Triple H when he beat Sting at the WrestleMania and you're like, what did you do that for? What did you need this for? Like, back in the day when Hogan would beat up and coming talent and you're like, great, you won. And you just put down this talent now that, needed that push. Tiffany, she's young. I mean, she's got a longer career ahead of her than Charlotte left. Losing to Charlotte here, what's that going to do for Charlotte? It's going to do horrible things, not horrible, but bad things for Tiffany.
To that point, it's not going to move the ball any further for Charlotte. Really, it'll just not. It's going to be almost like a loss of yardage, for football fans out there for Tiffany, because her momentum's going to be stopped and she's going to lose some yardage. So I hope she wins.
Exactly. But we got, like I said, not this weekend, not next weekend, and not the weekend after that. But the weekend after all of those is WrestleMania, the latest that it's ever been in the calendar year. And it's crazy because this is the last time we're talking about it in March, and we're going to have a few times to talk about WrestleMania build heading in and actually within the month of April itself. So it should be interesting going forward as they come out of Europe and back to the United States. And one thing about the Europe tour that I did learn, I didn't actually even know this. I do know about time zones and where everyone sits in the time. I did not know, though, that everyone changes their clocks. I do know here in the United States, some people do it differently. Arizona, for one, but I did not know about England. So this upcoming SmackDown will be at 4 o'clock Eastern time. And then the upcoming Raw will be at 3 o'clock Eastern time because they changed the clock. So there's a week or two of the year, and I think it goes even in the same direction in fall, where it's a week or two different, where they are only 4 hours ahead instead of 5 hours, which I was used to. So Berlin or Brussels is typically 6 hours ahead. For their Monday Night Raw was only 5 hours ahead. And as we saw this past week with Glasgow, Scotland, the episode was at 4 p.m. instead of 3 p.m. Because of that. So I learned something new, and it's kind of weird that they're doing this European tour while like the times are in flux. So like I said, like this week's Raw is at 4 o'clock, but next week's Raw is at 3 o'clock, even though they're in the same time zone, because while they're there, they will be switching the clocks over. One final question when it comes to that and the European tour stuff. Pat McAfee, he did make the flight over to Scotland. Now, did he make the flight back to the United States? You follow the Pat McAfee show a little more than I do. Was he back in the U.S. for the show this week?
I'm not 100% sure. I
know he flew in like day of, they said on the show. He flew in day of to Scotland.
Yeah, he flew in day of, and then he rented a kilt. He mentioned on Raw this week.
I saw that.
I know
he could do that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. I thought I thought it was bought and that was it. But I did see a headline. I didn't click on it or anything. I wasn't able to check it out. But he did an interview with LeBron James, so I'm guessing he's back home.
So wonder if he'll then fly back to London. I don't know if you've seen. I know you do. And that's the only reason I even know this. But I know. So you'll know this more than me. But Seth Rollins' schedule has kind of been doing the same. He was in Bologna, Italy, and then he flew back to Los Angeles, which is like a 10-hour flight from Italy to Los Angeles, if not longer than that, so that he could be a part of the NFL Network show all this week in Los Angeles, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Flying.
Just to confirm, I'm looking here on Pat's Twitter account while we're on here. Yeah, he looks like he's in his Thunderdome, so I think he's back in Indy right now.
But like I was saying with Seth Rollins, he went from Bologna, Italy on a SmackDown, which again, not even his show. He's a Raw guy. But we've talked about that. That is just, you want to talk about throwing things right out the window. I mean, this whole like title, what show it's on. I mean, I don't even remember what we said the over under was for how long till the draft didn't mean anything. I completely forgot because it seemed like just after like 2 or 3 weeks it meant nothing, and then once it starts to mean nothing, it just dilutes down to nothing. Where Cody Rhodes is on just everything. John Cena, we don't know what show he's supposed to be on. Seth Rollins is a Raw guy, but here he is only on SmackDown the last couple weeks. But he went from Bologna, Italy, back to Los Angeles to London this week for SmackDown. So he could be part of the NFL show. So interesting travel schedule for Seth Rollins.
He's got to be exhausted. That jet lag's got to be kicking him in the rear end right now.
I think people like Liv Morgan. I've noticed she's been at every one of the shows. So I think she's just sticking out there. I know some of them are probably sticking with certain schedules like Raw's here, SmackDown's here, that kind of thing. But Liv Morgan, I think she was in Spain. I think she was in Italy. I think she was in Brussels. I saw her this past week in Glasgow. So she's been like on, I guess, as the women's tag champ. She's been on all the shows. So I don't think she's
making those European cities. She's making the towns.
She's making them all.